sharing doesn't work, I can post it later. All right, so we are at Numbers 15. I'm going to share my screen now with my logos. Excellent. And let's see if I can. So are you guys seeing, I've got my tile view. Are you guys seeing everybody else on the left of the screen, or are you just seeing my logos program? Somebody can unmute.
Oh, I see everybody, but I'm about to just do the speakers, so it's just you.
Okay, yeah, because I've got it set to where you know, I've got you over to the side, but I didn't want to block your screen if I have mine on. So hopefully you can see Numbers 15. Bruce, go ahead.
All the people block off about the last 2 or 3 words on the right side of what you posted up there.
Right. So you can grab that window, I think, and move it around on your computer. I think you should be able to. Or you can.
Grab that icon over there. Yeah.
Are you on a laptop?
Yeah.
Yes.
So in the very top of that, you see like a line and then a box and then 2 lines, then a bunch of tiles. So if you can like press the hide thumbnail view, you can show small active speaker view, you can, you can mess around with that a little bit. That might get it out of the way, but I think you can just click on it and hold the mouse and you can move that around on your screen. Yeah.
Is what I did is if you click on the very left click on the very top of it, drag it all the way to the left where the table of contents is.
Yeah.
You can see the entire.
There you
That
go.
worked.
And I'm gonna keep my table of contents up there so that gives you a spot to put, because you want to see everybody, All right.
You also put everybody across the top.
Yep.
I accidentally did that.
Yeah, you can do that as well for sure. All right, well, let's get into this chapter 15. It's kind of at first kind of a lot of stuff that goes whoop right over our heads, but let's remember where we're at in the context. The beginning of the book of Numbers, we get all these instructions, setting up of the way things are going to be, and everything seems hunky-dory, but then no, it doesn't last. And there's a lot of rebellion that happens. God sends the people to spy out the land, and the majority report comes back that, oh, we can't tackle these people. They're too much for us. There's giants. We explored the possibility of the Nephilim being part of, the Amalekites being part of the Nephilim, and all of that. We did some fun work with that. But bottom line, we start seeing some rebellions going on. And so we got the bad report of the spies. And then we get the rebellion against Moses and Aaron and the leadership. And then Aaron and Miriam rebel against Moses. And so we start getting all these issues. And then all of a sudden, we get this chapter that wants to talk about offerings and sacrifices. And one commentator said it's like just a junkyard of a bunch of offerings thrown in there, and people wonder, well, why is this here? Doesn't seem to make sense, but I think we can make sense of it. I think there's a lot to this, but at first, because it talks about all these offerings, it's going to be a little bit, like when I read about all these different offerings, my head just starts to spin. So I'll try and hang in there with it, and I think there's some good stuff here for us. So, all right, here we go. The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Speak to the Israelites and say to them, when you come into the land you are to inhabit, which I am giving you, and you make an offering by fire to the Lord," this is the burnt offerings, "from the herd or from the flock, whether a burnt offering or a sacrifice, to fulfill a vow or as a free will offering, or at your appointed festivals, to make a pleasing odor for the Lord, Then whoever presents such an offering to the Lord shall present also a grain offering, 1/10 of an ephah of choice flour, mixed with 1/4 of a hin of oil. Moreover, you shall offer 1/4 of a hin of wine as a drink offering with the burnt offering or sacrifice for each lamb. For a ram, you shall offer a grain offering, 2/10 of an ephah of choice flour mixed with 1/3 of hin of oil. And as a drink offering, you shall offer 1/3 of a hin of wine, and a pleasing odor to the Lord. Is your head spinning yet? When you offer a bull as a burnt offering or a sacrifice to fulfill a vow or as an offering of well-being to the Lord, then you shall present with the bull a grain offering, 3/10 of an ephah of choice flour mixed with 1/2 a hin of oil, and you shall present as a drink offering 1/2 a hin of wine as an offering by fire, a pleasing odor to the Lord. All right, so maybe we pause here. And there's a couple things that right away jump out to me, but I want to hear what you all think here. And in fact, I wonder if there's a way. I was hoping there was a way that I could unmute everybody without unsharing my screen. But anyway, but nonetheless, you guys can unmute yourselves if you have questions or you want to make a comment. That would be great. So notice they are in the wilderness. And this says, when you come into the land in which you inhabit, in which I'm giving you, you make an offering by fire. And then it gives all these offerings. They don't have any of this stuff right now. They don't have oil. They might have some oil, but they don't have flour and they don't have lambs. What are they eating right now? They're eating manna.
Anna.
They're eating quail. So they don't have any of this stuff. So this really is looking ahead. This chapter, which just seems to almost not make sense where it is, all of a sudden casts our attention to the future. And that's kind of interesting. The other thing that jumped out at me was this pleasing odor for the Lord. I want to see if I can copy that and then do a quick little search here.
Maybe you could also translate those measurements. We've never heard of an ephah or a hin. What does that mean in our world?
Yeah, good. Can somebody take a quick look at your Bible notes and see if they say what an ephah is? I can definitely look it up. I want to take a quick search here of something.
Anything. As far as how much they are.
Let's see here. I think one of my commentaries talked about this. Pleasing.
It's a bushel.
It's a bushel. Okay, who knows how much is a bushel? A basket. I'm not a farmer, so.
It's one of the apple basket.
All right. Does that help, Gary?
Bushels much.
Yes, that helps.
Yeah. So so there's I'm gonna, let's see, I'll put you guys up here.
Being from North Dakota, we know what a bushel is.
There you go. That's right, you do. So if you can see this little search I've done.
That's funny.
Go ahead, sorry. Okay, so there's a lot here. This phrase, pleasing odor to the Lord. That's just kind of strange, isn't it? That this is the view of the Old Testament, is that God actually smells the odor of these sacrifices. Look at all of the stuff in Leviticus, and then we get to Numbers here, and I don't know why the chapter 15. Oh, there's chapter 15. Yeah, in Numbers 3. And then, well, we've got all of these occurrences in the 15th chapter. So it's just kind of interesting to me. Go ahead. Look at Ezekiel, that going all the way at the end. As a pleasing odor, I will accept you when I bring you out from the peoples and gather you out of the countries where you have been scattered, and I will manifest my holiness among you in the sight of the nations. So as a pleasing odor. And so it's kind of a earthy human way of saying that this is something that God delights in. So I just think it's interesting that, you know, in the Hebrew scriptures, that the Lord, you know, is that down to earth, and that's an expression to talk about what is pleasing to God, that these offerings are pleasing to God. What do you make of all of that? Anybody have thoughts?
I certainly enjoy the pleasing odor of a good barbecue T-bone steak.
That's right. Yes. See, Gary, I can relate to this. It's like, oh man, nothing like a nice barbecue, that smell. Oh, just, it's almost as like, for instance, I don't know if you guys are this way. I used to especially be this way. You know, in becoming a Lutheran pastor, I figured I had to learn to like coffee. You know, it's okay as long as you put a lot of sweet milk in it. I really like it. But, you know, so Starbucks figured that out, that a lot of people don't really like coffee, but if you put stuff in it, they'll drink. But I love the smell of
Drink to that.
Yes. Yeah. I love the smell of coffee. Almost more than I like drinking it, truthfully. You open up one of those new bags of coffee, just smells so good. So, you know, our Lord, these offerings are pleasing odor. Yeah, yeah. What do you think that means, Sharon? Yeah.
Well, it's also, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good, because we have a mute thing here. Okay. It's like a full meal in a way, because you have your meat, you have your breads, or the, you know, biscuits, or whatever you have. And so you have you have what you need to eat and nourish yourself.
Yes. Yeah, I love it. It's the complete experience. Yeah, really good. Really good.
I think it also places God in heaven, you know, it's rising up to him. So it kind of gives him a location or someplace to look up to.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah.
Then there's the verse in Revelation about our prayers mixing with incense and rising up. And
Yes,
like that song, our prayers rise up like incense.
Yeah, seems like there's a New Testament. There's the Revelation text, and then there's, like, Paul talks about us offering up ourselves to God as a like a living sacrifice. I thought there was the same phrase, but I'm not finding it now. So yeah, really good. Sharon, yeah.
Well, I think Bert would like this because it sort of justifies being a carnivore. He's not a vegan.
Well, I guess
it's okay to eat red meat.
I guess, you know, yeah, God was not a vegan, but he had grain in there too, and wine and the whole business. So yeah, that's great. That's great.
I don't know. In reading all this and then looking ahead a little bit, all these little rinky-dinky things that you have to follow to please the Lord. I think eventually, if you try to follow all of these things, you're going to get upset and rebel, which may be one of the factors behind the rebellion of the people.
Yes. Yes.
I know in the military, for me, if there's too many rules and regulations, they tend to get broken, and you want to overlook them.
Aha. Yes. So this seems burdensome to you.
Don't know about
Yeah.
that.
Well, it certainly could be if your life is taken up with trying to meet all these little rules and regulations, and so it could be.
Yeah. Yeah. And I wasn't saying that as a criticism. You know, it, like I say, my head spins with all these different offerings and having to keep track of all of that. And it is something, as I read this, I go, thanks be to God that, you know, Jesus, you know, offered
Right.
himself for us. And
That's right.
now, you know, service and prayer is our offering. Yeah.
But I like it too, that it's not just one person doing this. You're doing it with a whole community.
Nice.
And there's a lot, you know, when you're preparing your Easter breakfast or whatever, you're aware that you're not the only one doing that before you go to church or after church having a meal. And so I think that brings you into kind of the sense of community worship.
Yeah.
And celebrating together. And the wives would all be busy stirring these things up. The guys would be out getting the animals. And the kids would learn how important the parents were taking that. They would consider it part of worship.
Yeah. Absolutely. And since you mentioned that, and I have to say, I don't have everybody on my screen, so make sure you unmute yourself and just break in here if you have a comment. I don't want to miss it. Since you mentioned that, you made me think of a little section from Mark Allen Powell's book, Giving to God. Let's see, I'll put my, there we go. So this is Mark Allen Powell's book, Giving to God. And from 1 Chronicles 29, it says, all things come from you, and of your own have we given you. So there's a recognition in offering things, Sharon, like you mentioned, and especially doing it as a group, that all things come from God. And Mark Allen Powell this is a book on stewardship, really, but he says this about ancient Israel and all these drink offerings and stuff. So it just made me think of this little section. So I wanted to read this. Picture yourself in ancient Israel in early years before there was a temple. That's what we're studying right now. The community gathers to worship around some rudimentary altar, and each person brings an offering to God. Some have drink offerings that they pour out on the altar until the liquid is gone. Others have grain offerings, sheaves of wheat that they place on the altar and light on fire. A few may even bring birds or animals, which are killed and like the wheat, consumed in the flames. What is the point? Well, as any Old Testament commentary or encyclopedia will tell you, the thinking that justified such sacrificial rites could be varied and complex. True. But the basic point seems to have been this: worshipers brought things that they valued to the altar and left them there. They gave them up. They gave them away. The liquid was poured out, the animals were slaughtered, the grain was incinerated. People gave offerings to God as an act of worship, and those offerings were simply destroyed. I wonder what would happen in a modern church if we collected the offering on Sunday morning, set the plates on the altar, and then tossed in a match, burning up everyone's money. I know I've mentioned this quote before. All right, I know that would be illegal. It is against the law to burn and destroy UN's currency. I also realize that most people probably write checks, so for them it wouldn't really matter. But my point is that many people in modern congregations would be appalled if offerings they gave to the church were simply destroyed rather than put to some good use. Of course, that only makes sense. But then what was going on in ancient Israel? The grain, the animals, even the drink offerings, these were the ancient equivalents of money. The Israelites found it worthwhile, indeed necessary, to give away their possessions in sacrificial acts of worship to God. The point was not what happened to the grain after it was placed on the altar. The point was simply putting that grain on the altar in the first place. You know, he goes on to say, somebody started thinking this wasn't such a good idea. Such suggestions have obvious merit as far as, you know, putting those offerings to better use. But the problem comes when over time people begin to forget the real reason for making these offerings. They begin to think God wants me to give up something of my grain so that the poor can be fed or priests can be paid. That had not been the original idea. And then he goes on. So really, the reason I read this, yeah, please, Bruce. Oh, you're not unmuted yet. Here we go. I gotcha. Okay, are you doing it or am I? There you go. Well, there you go, Bruce.
Okay, well, I wonder if in the burning, it caused smoke, and if the feeling in that ancient time was God could take the smoke up into heaven, where he couldn't take the grain or whatever else. The only way he could consume it is in the air.
Yeah, that was the way it could be received by God because you did that. Yeah, interesting. Interesting. Yeah. Yep. And yeah, good. Responses or reactions to this Alan quote or just what you read here about people offering stuff to the Lord. And Cindy, since you have your picture muted, I can't see you, so you just got to break in here when you want to, okay? I'm not saying you have to say anything right now, but I just, there. Oh, now I can see you. Yeah, there you go. Good, yep. So, it's an interesting concept to think about offering things to the Lord, and that the purpose is just simply to give them to God. It's not what you can do with them. The point is really just the act of worship, or in this case, you know, us making a sacrifice because of something that might have been done or not done. So, but yeah. So I think it's cool that it's a pleasing odor to the Lord. Any other stuff on that? And we'll keep moving here. Okay. All right.
Well, in setting this up, in the desert, they really don't have any other place to go. They can't say, oh, well, I don't know about how we're doing these. Let's go over to the synagogue down the way to see how they're doing it. And so the fact that they are together, they're isolated, this is kind of a big focus point.
Yeah.
And God knows that these rituals are going to be needed to carry them far forward in the future.
Yeah.
And my Jewish friend who I called on Passover Day had said, oh, I can't talk now. I'm busy getting ready. Got so many things to do. She was happy about it. And she said, got chicken to fix and this. And I know that today the Jewish people are doing all these details for celebrating Passover and Shabbat. And the same kind of things that date way back to these early laws. So it was an establishing the system.
Beautiful. And these rites and these offerings were very much tied into their identity.
Yeah.
And when they get into the land, it's going to continue to be important. Because, you know, when you get into the promised land and things seem good, what do you start to think? Oh, look what we did. But all of these offerings, I think, remind them that everything is from God.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but I don't think they still do all this today.
So Kathy, depends on what kind of Judaism.
Oh,
Yeah. The Reformed Jewish folks primarily focus on gathering in the synagogue, reading the scriptures, and then they do celebrate the primary feasts
Mhm.
and the Sabbath. They attend to, but they're not as, you know, rigid on it. But then you go to the other far extreme, the Orthodox, well, not just the Orthodox, but the what's sometimes called the ultra Orthodox. They have a different word in Hebrew for it, but you know, they are very, very strict, and they do try and do all these different things. But the difference now is that there's no tabernacle and there's no temple. So a lot of this stuff involves the temple. And so Judaism now, after the temple was destroyed, doesn't carry on those things because they're not a part of their life anymore because the temple's not there. So yeah, but the concept, like Sharon mentioned, of these rituals, of these sacrifices, of these offerings, whether it be the prep for Passover or whatever, very much keep people grounded in their identity, and certainly they're going to need that. What do you think about just where we're at in this conversation? What do most people think about when it comes to their possessions and the stuff they have? You know, what's our human nature when it comes to our stuff?
It belongs to us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. I mean, we worked for it, didn't we? Yeah, Cindy.
I just raised my hand for the first time. Okay. What I was interested in is why do all these things? And I found that in verse 3, it said to fulfill a vow or as a free will offering.
Yeah.
And then in 8, it says the same thing, to fulfill a vow or as an offering of well-being to the Lord. So there was this this wanting. I mean, I think God was trying to say, this is why you're doing it, not just this is what you're doing, but why you're doing it. I thought that was interesting.
That is great. And there's different reasons for these offerings. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I especially like the free will offering. That just, I went, oh, he was making the instructions, or she, whatever.
Yeah.
God was making the instructions, but they were, I think, I have a feeling God was trying to say, think about this. Why are you doing it?
Yeah. Nice. Nice. Yeah, I love that. I love that. And also what occurs to me on that is that, you know, it's nice to be thankful, but it's also nice to give it a physical expression of that. Okay, I'm fulfilling a vow, and so I'm, you know, again, there's something physical I can do to express that. We can say with our words, but then also we have an action to follow it up with. So, yeah.
I think the gods in the area, the Canaanite gods were real capricious. And so the people never knew if what they were going to give was going to have any sort of result. But Yahweh sets up a system where people know exactly what to do. He's not capricious.
Ah, nice. Nice. Right. They have some dependability and promise here, and it's not a matter of, you know, who knows whether this will work or not.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool.
I have a chart. I don't know if it would be helpful or not, but I have a chart from my Old Testament text that lists out all of the offerings and what their purpose was. And I have it in a picture if you want me to share it on my screen.
I think that would be great. I was just thinking about trying to go to a Bible dictionary and look at some of these different offerings. So yeah, go ahead. Oh, I have to
I
stop.
think you have to give me permission.
Yeah, I have to stop sharing, and now you can share. Yeah. I think I've got it, the meeting set to where anybody can share. So
Yeah. Let's see if I can. Oops. Sorry.
that's okay. We got you. But I think you.
I'll get picture up so that you don't look at the contract that I was working on.
Well, there it was. We saw it a minute.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, for a minute, I think.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
That was
There we
it.
go.
we're seeing your email.
There,
We
that's
got
it.
Now we got it. Yeah.
So this this shows the type of offering and then, you know, the occasion or reason that it's for.
So let's look at those occasions.
Wow.
General thankfulness. So burnt offerings were sometimes for expiation or propitiation of sin, demonstrating dedication. That is really great. That's really helpful. Guilt offerings applies to situations where there's been desecration or desacralization of something holy. I like the peace offerings here.
Oh. I don't know if they had a way to have food otherwise.
Yeah.
Huh.
Interesting. Does it go down further, Kim?
No, that's it.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's great. That's a nice summary. So there's all these things that people did, which is cool. So okay.
I got to figure out how to get back now.
I think I can just stop participating.
Can you just take it? Okay.
Yeah, yeah. There we go. All right, good. Sharon.
Well, you know, thinking about these rituals and the thankfulness, and I'm reminded in Luke, it talks about how the boy Jesus goes to the temple every year. His parents went to Jerusalem for the festival of the Passover. So when he was 12, he was in the temple, only he began to follow God's will at that point, and they couldn't find him. So he was brought up to be part of course, by the time, you know, 2,000 years had come by, they may not be doing everything exactly the same way, but they did offer burnt offerings in the temple, I guess, and did that kind of thing. So Jesus was very familiar with that.
Absolutely. His family would have gone up to Jerusalem at least 4 times a year for the 4 main festivals. And when they did that, they would bring their offerings and whatnot. So absolutely. Yeah. He was very familiar with this. So yeah. Good.
So setting this up as a future thing while they're in the desert eating manna and quail, this is a promise of abundance. They're going to have all these good things and enough to sacrifice.
Exactly. I think that is a really important point when we read this chapter. You look at where the people are at. You've got the old generation that just keeps rebelling. And then now you've got this new generation. And so these laws kind of come as promise, don't they? Because, hey, it reminds them when you come into the land, you know, you're going to have this opportunity. So it's interesting how these laws become good news and blessing, because they root the people that you're going to be in the promised land someday. So yeah, no, that's really great. All right, really good. Let's keep going. Verse 11. Thus it shall be done, and we just get some more of the same. Excuse me. Thus it shall be done for each ox or ram or for each of the male lambs or the kids, according to the number that you offer. So you shall do with each and every one. Every native Israelite shall do these things in this way, in presenting an offering by fire, a pleasing odor to the Lord. And alien who lives with you or who takes up permanent residence among you and wishes to offer an offering by fire, a pleasing odor to the Lord, shall do as you do. Now, this little statement is pretty radical. This is not just someone who's hanging out on the outskirts of the camp, but they get to go in and offer a sacrifice in the tabernacle court like the rest of the folks. As for the assembly, there shall be for both you and the resident alien a single statute, a perpetual statute throughout your generations. You and the alien shall be alike before the Lord. You and the alien who resides with you shall have the same law, the same ordinance. Boy, isn't that interesting, huh?
Well, it sure speaks to, it goes to the current thing about people coming to this country and still maintaining their old ways and not wanting to be assimilated.
That wasn't exactly what I was thinking, but yes. Maybe if you are an alien, a new citizen, or someone visiting, when in Rome, do as the Romans do, I guess, that you need, like if I went and visited a country different from my own, I would expect to keep the laws that that country has, you know. I would certainly do that. Yeah.
Well, there's an element of having to learn it, but it also strongly indicates that it has to be taught. So the Jewish people have to be willing to teach the alien.
Right. And they, you know, they don't have a separate statute. They have the same statute. So Bruce, one way to come at it is, well, this is the expectations for the alien, but then there's another expectation of the Israelites that they're going to, like Kim said, teach and welcome that person next to them in these offerings. And so it's interesting, isn't it? It kind of comes at it both ways.
Was that an early form of conversion?
I think it would be a good word. I think the assumption is that people who are not Israelites are going to be becoming Israelites, that they're going to become Jewish. I mean, Jewish is not a word yet at this time. That comes way later when only the nation of Judah is left of the, you know, all the tribes and stuff. So, but nonetheless, yeah, I think it is a kind of, this is how you bring someone from the outside into your community. Yeah, I think that's there. Yeah.
Well, I think it's a really good idea for God, because it seems like the Israelites, when they sinned big, it was because other cultures around them had these more powerful, they thought, gods, or, you know, something like the golden calf and all that. It seems like they strayed to other gods fairly easily. So if you have those people living with you and they're looking around seeing, you know, it's better to say, you live with us, worship our God, and you have access to the same blessings we do. And it wouldn't be maybe so tempting for them to, you know, disobey the first commandment. I don't know.
No, that's really good wrestling with this, Kathy. And that you're absolutely right. A big part of the narrative is that the people went after other gods. And so I can say that an interesting part of this is that other books of the Bible especially like Ezra and Nehemiah, when the people of, this is way past where we are now, they come back into the land, you know, there's this sense that, hey, separate yourself from your foreign wives or spouses, you know, because this has been a corrupting influence.
Yeah.
Here in these wilderness wanderings, there's an acknowledgement that there are other people who are joining in now.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And so there's like a welcome here. In fact, maybe it's a little bit of a stretch, but I mean, you even think of New Testament that where Paul talks about dividing walls being knocked down in Ephesians. And then in Galatians, there's neither Jew nor Greek. Just saying that would have been just unthinkable to people of Jesus's day and Paul's day. He does say in Christ there is neither Jew nor Greek. He doesn't just say there's neither Jew nor Greek now. He says in Christ that dividing wall has been broken down. But here, early on, you know, 1,000 years before, we've got this sense that there is a way to incorporate the alien, the resident alien, the person that's not a part of us but kind of maybe is, and a way to have them be a part of and that they're welcome, that they get to, the same statute applies to them as to us. I really like, Bruce, I like your comment, because at first I was thinking of it as, you know, the Israelites, this is how they welcome someone who's an alien, but it also goes the other way. As an alien, this is the expectations that you, that there are of you. So it kind of goes both ways that way. That's interesting. So yeah, good. Excellent. And you know, the other thing that's probably important to say when it comes to this concept of the alien is there weren't set borders, you know, in this time. It was more like, are you being a part of the community or not? And if you are and you want to participate, that's the way it works. Later on, you know, Israel becomes a nation. Right now, they're just a wandering band of people. So that's probably important to hold up. Other thoughts on that? That really has some kind of fun connections, doesn't it? Or interesting connections. Anybody else on that before I keep moving on? That's my big worry with Zoom, is I don't want to miss your comments. So, all right, that's looking like we're good to keep rolling here then. Okay, let's do. Okay, the Lord spoke to Moses saying, speak to the Israelites and say to them, after you come into the land which I am bringing you, whenever you eat of the bread of the land, you shall present a donation to the Lord from your first batch of dough. You shall present a loaf as a donation. You shall present it just as you present a donation from the threshing floor. Throughout your generations, you shall give to the Lord a donation from the first of your batch of dough. What does that make you all think about?
First fruits.
First fruits. Good. What do you get? What's this? I thought they already gave the first fruits. They gave the first fruits of the wheat.
Yeah. Huh.
So what's the significance of giving the first fruit of the first batch? Well, how does that preach, or how does that teach?
Give to the Lord before you use it up yourself.
Yes, good. Good.
I think it represents also the fact that you went to a lot of effort to make these things. And so it's not just the product you're offering, it's your own effort and your own sacrifice.
Okay, I like that word effort. So, yeah, good. Yeah.
I think too, it puts God in the middle of all your work. You know, if you're harvesting or cooking, you know, you've got him in mind, that the first thing that you have to do when you're finished is to give him some.
Nice. Yeah. I keep going on this. Other folks.
It's kind of like you are giving to the Lord before you pay all your bills.
Sure. That's that first fruits giving thing. You know, yeah. And that's what we tend to say, you know, the tithe was an Old Testament standard. It's certainly a good goal. Sometimes some Christian churches teach it as it's an assumed thing. That's where everybody needs to be. And then you grow on top of that. I get nervous when we talk about percentages or amounts. I really think the best model that we bring from the Old Testament and the New Testament, for that matter, is this concept of first fruits. Because if you wait to give to the Lord what you have left at the end of the month, how much is going to be there? Well, maybe if you're a better budgeter than me, you have a lot left. But, you know, that's why we love to have people use the online giving options where you just make it automatic. And some people just like, I don't want to think about it. That's not mine. That's not my money. My first fruits is the Lord's. And so I just want it to go right out of my account into the church account. And the problem, of course, with that is you miss that act of giving something in the offering plate. But so, you know, but a lot of people like that process because it can just be automatic. And then whatever they give on top of that is kind of a special thing. Some people, Mark Allen Powell will talk about in his book, Giving to God, he'll say there's your pledge and your offerings. He doesn't use the word tithe, but there's your first fruits portion that, you know, that's what you ought to do. And then your offering is something on top of that. And I think that is helpful to some degree. But I'm still wrestling. I've just got this thought. If the grain, you know, in the harvest they gave to God, right? They did that, first fruits they gave. But then they also give from what they create from what God gave them. And I think that's significant.
Well, that speaks to the idea that you've added value to the grain. When you make dough out of it, it's worth more than it is when it was grain.
Right.
More usable.
Yes. Keep going. Oh, sorry. I thought I heard somebody saying something.
We muted?
You're not, Sharon.
Oh,
it's okay.
We just lost the screen.
Oh.
We were down to host your own Zoom meeting. I don't know what happened, but.
Oh, no. Well, we still got you, so.
Okay. But you can mute us.
Okay.
We can't mute ourselves. It doesn't show.
Okay, I'll mute you, but then also we'll see if we can find your screen somehow. Let's see. It should come back because it says you still have video, but anyway, we'll keep going while you work on that. If you think about, because we can still see you guys, by the way. If you think about, a lot of people say, well, God gave me the gifts and the abilities, but what I've done with them, I've done, like, yeah, God gave me abilities and God got me started in life and he's blessed me with certain gifts, but I'm the one that, made something of it. Well, that's true to some degree. I mean, but here, if you give to the first fruits of the dough, what you've done with it also belongs to God. And I just think that's interesting and telling. So, yeah.
I just wonder if that first batch is fresh and has it full of rising and all of that.
Yeah.
No refrigeration or
Yeah.
whatever. So the later part of the loaf isn't going to be near as good.
Yeah. So it's the best.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nice. Not just a part of it, but the best part. Yeah. Yeah.
I think sometimes when at least I have thought this myself at times that, we're to give time and talent and, well, treasure time and talent. And I think we can, if we don't have the treasure to give, we can sort of think our time and talent isn't as valuable, we're at second best because we don't have the money, but really that's not what this is saying. The time and talent is just as valuable as the treasure.
Yeah. Perfect.
Well, I think it's about putting God first too, in
Yeah.
all that you do, whether you planted and harvested or then used it to make the dough. I mean, we say, we give thee but thine own, whatever that gift may be. All that we have is from God alone, a trust, O Lord, from thee, And what I never thought about before was just giving it to God, just for God's pleasure. I always thought, you do it because God's going to use that where you can't. He has the bigger reach. And but yeah, I think this kind of symbolizes we put God first in all we do, and in the best, we give that to the Lord.
Yeah.
Kinda.
That's beautiful. No, that's right on. Right on. Yeah. It is an interesting concept. I keep going back to that all of it, certainly we give to God because God does amazing things with what we do, like the little boy that had, what did he have? Some fish and loaves, and look what Jesus did with it. But also there is value in just giving to God.
Yeah.
To our spiritual walk.
I never thought of that.
Yeah. Often quoted passage on this is where Jesus says, where your treasure is, there will be your heart. The interesting thing is that, I always, when I thought of that quote, I'd think, well, where your heart is, that's where your treasure will be. That's the way we think about it, because your treasure reflects what you believe is important. But actually, Jesus says, where you put your treasure, there will your heart be. So that's where it comes to this offering to God, just for the sake of offering something to God, has power and merit, because it sets your heart where it needs to be. Yeah, Gloria.
I like that.
Well, it talks about doing it for the generations too. Throughout the generations you do this, so it's something that it isn't a one-time thing. You teach your children to do the same thing.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great part of this. Yeah, excellent. So yeah, thank you, Kim, Kathy. Those are just right on. Those are great sermons. In fact, I hope this records well so I can go back and, our next stewardship drive, because you nailed it. So that's great. Anybody else on this little dough paragraph? And then we'll see if we can finish up chapter 15 here. Chapter 16 gets really challenging. So I don't want to make it there.
Pastor,
Please.
Pastor, I thought about, when you make bread and you're doing all, just creating the bread, you are using a kind of a process of work, but it's also creating it too. And I think by giving God the first part, there's a different relationship to the rest of the part, meaning that you kind of think that, yes, I gave the first part to God. And so while you're eating the rest of the bread, or the loaves of bread, you're still remembering God. It's almost like just the act of doing it kind of keeps it in your memory.
Yeah. Oh, nice.
Whereas if you ate it at first and then waited till the very end, okay, I'll just give God this little piece, it wouldn't have that meaning, as you're experiencing the eating of it.
Nice. That is.
Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense to me. Yeah. Well, maybe that's why we say grace at the beginning of our meal and not at the end.
Yep.
Yeah. Excellent. Really helpful, Cindy. No, I love it. Okay. Here we go. We got trouble now. But if you unintentionally fail to observe all these commandments that the Lord has spoken to Moses, everything that the Lord has commanded you, everything that the Lord has commanded you by Moses, Bert, that goes back to your comment earlier. From the day the Lord gave a commandment and thereafter throughout your generations, then if it was done unintentionally without the knowledge of the congregation, the whole congregation shall offer one young bull for a burnt offering, a pleasing order to the Lord, together with its grain offering and its drink offering according to the ordinance, and one male goat for a sin offering. Okay, so there's some restitution that needs to be made. Maybe God's honor has been hurt because of this, but it was unintentional. This is a sin of omission. The priest shall make atonement for all the congregation of the Israelites, and they shall be forgiven. It was unintentional, and they have brought their offering, an offering by fire to the Lord, and their sin offering before the Lord for their error. All the congregation of the Israelites shall be forgiven, as well as the aliens residing among them. They get the forgiveness too, because the whole people was involved in the error. So I just think this is, I don't want to say it's humorous, because it's certainly not, but I just think it's kind of interesting that there's this provision for, hey, if you accidentally mess up, this is how you deal with it. So that's interesting. All right, let's keep going. An individual who sins unintentionally, so that's the group. So you got a group mess up where we did it as a group. Now we've got an individual who sins unintentionally, shall present a female goat a year old for a sin offering, and the priest shall make atonement for the Lord. Now notice the priest does the atonement part. That's probably important as we get on in the story, and it's obviously been emphasized already. So you bring the animal, but the priest does the sacrifice for the one who commits an error when it is unintentional, to make atonement for the person who then shall be forgiven. I wonder what the Hebrew word here. Yeah. Interesting. Okay. For both the native among the Israelites and the alien residing among them, you shall have the same law for anyone who acts in error. So again, the alien is right alongside the Israelite. But whoever acts high-handedly, whether a native or an alien, affronts the Lord and shall be cut off from among the people. So this is an interesting word, I imagine. I want to dig down on that one a little bit here. Let's see.
High-handed.
With a high hand.
Yeah, high-handed, mine says. Here, I've got you guys on the side. I got to put you up top here so I can read this. The verb asa has the basic connotation of do or make. It's used numerous. So interesting. You squeeze down here. Okay, that might be just one of the words there in the high-handed thing. Oh,
Mine says defiantly.
defiantly. Okay, yeah. Interesting. If I had more time, I'd love to dig down into that word a little bit. Whether a native or an alien affronts the Lord and shall be cut off from among the people. So notice what cuts you off. Not messing up, but being arrogant about it. Wow. That's that hits.
We were in error, huh?
Yeah, it's not just messing up, but it's being arrogant about it, or high-handed, about presumptuous. Because of having despised the word of the Lord and broken his commandments, such a person shall be utterly cut off and bear the guilt. So there's no repentance here, is I think what this is talking about. So interesting. Well, I think there's a lot of grace here for this. The priest is making atonement. There's recognition that sometimes it's up not intentionally but unintentionally. I think that's interesting. If other folks have thoughts on that. Okay, give you a second to think. All right.
Well, our Bible here does say, unlike unintentional sins for which there are provisions of God's mercy, one who sets his hand defiantly to despise the word of God and to blaspheme his name must be punished.
Yeah.
So that makes it sound pretty bad, not just, well, I don't know. High-handed is hard to, it doesn't sound, it sounds like more than just arrogance. Well, it's putting yourself first, but this whole thing with despising the word of God and blaspheming his name, that sounds pretty bad.
Yes. That defiant is probably then a better word, like the NIV, I think, has to say. So, yeah. This is serious. I think your notes there, this is it's a serious thing to harden your heart and be puffed up, defiant, high-handed. Oh, I don't care. I did it. It's fine. I'm not worried about what God thinks. That is a troubling, scary posture. Yeah. When I think about this utterly cut off, I immediately think of a passage here. Let me see if I can. Let's see. If I can go to, we read it last week, I think, Romans 11. When it comes to the arrogant part, yeah, we did read this last week. But remember this, Paul's talking about us as being a wild branch that's been grafted into the root of the olive tree, that Israel is the natural branches, but we're just a wild olive shoot that's been grafted into the tree. Note then the kindness and severity of God. Severity towards those who have fallen, but God's kindness you provided, you continue in his kindness. Otherwise, you too will be cut off. So the point here is, if you're high-handed, if you're all puffed up in your own righteousness, if you think, you've got everything squared away and you're the greatest thing going and no one else has, it's kind of self-righteous almost, to me, is the way I hear that, but I might be reading more into that. Okay, good. Any other thoughts or comments on this little section here? Okay. Well, let's just let's end on such a, we're at the end of our time, but where we go from here now is a very serious, not sin of omission, but a sin of commission, of working on the Sabbath day. And if sometimes we can look with contempt even upon the Orthodox Jewish folks, how seriously they take the Sabbath, even not pressing an elevator button, some of them, well, there's good reason. They're Leviticus, Exodus, Numbers. Here's a guy who collected sticks, and he gets the death penalty. So this is where I'm glad. Maybe the best way to end today is say, I'm glad we live under a new covenant, and not this one anymore. So, but look at how important the Sabbath is. We could probably spend some time talking about why it's important to rest, but maybe that's just where we'll pick up next week. Anybody have any concluding thoughts or either about Bible study or here, actually, let me unshare my screen and then I will unmute. So you're all unmuted now, or I think so. Well, not everybody, but anyway, anybody have any concluding celebrations, thoughts?
That's Cindy.
Extremely happy to have these.
Absolutely. Yeah. Let's see. Kathy, were you saying something? You're still muted. I guess I can't unmute you.
Great to get together every week.
Yeah. Great, Jerry. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. This is a great thing that we can still get together. So, yeah.
Big faces that we don't get to see every day, which is nice.
Yes.
That's right, Melanie.
It helps us remember your names.
Yeah, that's the great thing is we've got, some names down here. So that's really good. So, all right. Well, thank you again.
Thank you.
It's just really,
Yeah.
it's interesting. These Bible studies are part of the rhythm of one's week.
Yes.
So it's really helpful to still have them. So, yeah.
You can remember what day it is.
That's right. That's right. Because all we've got around is these dogs. It's always pestering.
That's the biggest Swiffer I ever saw.
Yeah. That's what she does. She just keeps me she gives me rhythm. Give me attention. So, all right, you guys. Here, I'll close this in a prayer and be blessed by our worship, our online worship this Sunday. I'll just let you guys know. There'll be an email out about this, but I really did not intend to include Holy Communion in the weekly service because I still wrestle with some of the issues around doing that kind of remotely, with you guys putting your bread and wine by your computer screen or your table, your home altar. I'm torn about that. I think it's really beautiful on one hand and good, but I had planned not to do that every Sunday, but the feedback has been so powerful and so pervasive all encompassing that we are going to go ahead and do that this week. So you can be just heads up on that day service. Also, I've shared with people that you don't have wine or grape juice. It's okay just to use bread. You don't have to use orange juice. That's probably not the best practice. Jesus took wine, so we'll stick with that, or grape juice, which is unfermented. But so it's okay if you don't have wine and you just have a piece of bread, that you still, as we talk about receiving in one kind, that's still the Lord's Supper. So anyway, hope that makes sense. So I'll just give you guys since we're in this little meeting, a little heads up for Sunday. But intern Marietta brings the word this Sunday, and I think it'll be good. And so I'm so thankful for how people have really expressed their appreciation for what we've been doing there. I love the Easter service. It was really great. What we did is Katie and Sandy was with her mom. And so we paused the tape right after the readings and then listened to Andrea Bocelli sing. I don't know if you caught his performance, but you should look it up on YouTube. I think it's available. It was a YouTube live thing at the time. And he sings Amazing Grace. And anyway, so it was a powerful thing. So, all right. Well, let me close this in prayer. Gracious God, thank you for this time. Bless everybody. Give them endurance and strength and peace today. And thank you for the sacrifice and the offering of your Son for us. And may we offer our lives as a living sacrifice to you that we know is pleasing and that you love. And so be with us until we meet again. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill.
Thank you.
You're welcome. God bless you
you.
guys.
Thank you, you too.
Yeah.
Yes.
Video and
Thank
see
you.
if you can get it back.
Have a
Bye,
blessed
everyone.
day.
Yeah.
No.